Hey guys, it's Therese and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about my top 10 books of 2018, and these aren't my favorite, like all-time favorite books of 2018 or the ones that even came out in 2018. I'm sure some of them were 2018 releases, some of them not so much, but I do have a couple honorable mentions, so keep in mind for that. But let's just kind of jump right in. I have 3 honorable mentions altogether. And that one of them is When the Moon Was Ours by Anna Marie McLemore. This is a magical realism book that follows these 2 teenagers named Sam and Miel. Sam loves to paint the moons for Miel, while Miel grows roses out of her wrists. And one day these three girls find some intrigue in Sam and Miel's roses and sees that she and tries to get those roses from her no matter what the means. And that involves kind of, it's been a while, I'm kind of winded. That involves her secrets getting thrown out. I love this book for so many reasons. There is a lot, I did a tea talk on it, so leave that somewhere if I remember. But I thought the writing was absolutely magnificent. I adored that these characters are so devoted to one another. There's a really strong familial vibe throughout the rest of the series, or rest of the book, that really got it for me, and I love the representation in it. We have, I don't want to say much because it does spoil certain things. Yeah, it does spoil certain things, but there is some LGBT rep in this book that I thought was wonderfully done, and she even mentions in her acknowledgments that she wrote this book as a way of understanding things in both hers and her husband's life, I believe. Yeah, so I just adore this book. I was brought to tears. I want to reread this book soon. And I highly recommend it. Like, you guys have no idea how much this book is just so gorgeous in all aspects of everything. The next honorable mention is a book that I do have, but it's buried in the bins behind this camera, so I can't really get to it. But that is Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. I don't remember my rating for this, but I did enjoy this book despite its overall kind of, like, I don't want to say repetitiveness, because it wasn't very repetitive, but I did guess the ending. I guessed who it was. So that was kind of why I didn't put it in my top 10 of 2018, but I definitely did enjoy it. It's one of the first few thrillers that I've read in a long time, if not the first adult thriller that I have read, period. So I just adore this book, and I would highly recommend it to everyone. And definitely, like, Paula Hawkins is a really good, like, author, so I'm definitely going to be picking up more of her stuff in the future. The next book is actually a poetry collection, one that my friend Ethel suggested to me, and that is The World's Wife by Carol Ann Duffy. This essentially follows all the women in, like, popular history or mythology, or she added on women in this, like, in certain scenarios, and wrote about them through, like, by their husbands, their lives, and everything. And I thought that it was so great, and so, like, some parts of it were just so funny. So I just highly recommend this book, and I definitely will be rereading it in the future because I reread it after I first read it. So now for my top 10 books, sitting at top 10 is actually Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. This is the sequel to Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, and it follows Selena Sardothian as an assassin after she's freed from the camps of Endovier to go ahead and fight in the King's Champion and see what happens there. And it involves fairies and assassins and magic. And the reason why this book made my top 10 and not the first book or the third book was that the second book threw me in for a loop. There were a lot of things going on in the second book that really kind of surprised me, and Sarah J. Maas has, I think, a talent when reading second books that they don't end up falling into, like, the second book slump, if you guys know what I'm talking about, or, like, authors always seem to struggle with their second book. She seems to make hers better, and I'm so glad for that because I was really hesitant about Throne of Glass while I was reading the first book, and then the second book kind of sold the series for me. So happy it's on top 10, and I'm just so glad that we got to see more of my wonderful Dorian, because I love Dorian, and what happens to him at the end of this book was not okay, and he just deserves all the happiness in the world. Sitting at number 9 is Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Now, I don't remember the rating I gave for this book, but I do have a tea talk. And I enjoyed this book so much. It is historical fiction, and it is set, I think, in Victorian age London, where these characters are, from growing up, they had been told that they are meant to compete with one another, and last one standing is the best magician ever. However, what the competitors didn't realize was that they were going to fall in love with one another, and it just involves this fantastical circus, and I heard she has another book coming out soon, and I'm very excited to get into that one. And I I adored this book so much. The writing was so poetic, the characters were so fleshed out, like even from the minor characters. The very minor characters had such an important role, and the concept they had for the circus was just so great. Like, I wish that this book would become a movie just so we can see it in, can see the magic that is the night circus going on. Because I think that would just be so wonderful to read about. Or watch, my bad. Sitting at number 8 is another book that is kind of buried somewhere, and that is Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. I adored this book. I thought, like, a lot of the times when I read thrillers, I try to foreshadow things that aren't really there and try to guess the ending. And this one threw me in for a constant loop. There were so many twists and turns, and if you guys don't know, this follows Libby Day after several years after the events where her sisters and her mother were brutally murdered, and she put her brother away for their deaths. She now is being contacted by this club that's really kind of interested in serial killers and like brutal murders and everything, and is trying to free him, saying that she like lied or she was coerced into making these kind of assumptions. And it's her finding herself back in a similar position that she was way back when, where she didn't really know what the truth was. So like I said, this book had thrown me in for a loop. There were so many things happening that I enjoyed it so much, and I didn't really know what was going to happen, even though I had guessed. Like, I was guessing the entire time who could have killed them, and it was just like loop after loop after loop that I was just like mind blown by the end of the book, which is saying something, because like I said, I tend to guess endings for myself and ruin things for myself, so it's fine. Sitting at number 7 is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. I adored this series. Well, you guys know me, I love serial killers and learning about them, and this is an historical fiction novel where Audrey Rose is a girl who loves opening up bodies, like dead bodies, and inspecting what's going on. And during this time, Jack the Ripper's killings have kind of run rampant and has been terrorizing everyone, so she takes it upon herself to figure out who the killer is. I enjoy this for a multitude of reasons. I thought that even though it is set in Victorian London where things were very hard for women, she still managed to create this one, like Carrie Maniscalco managed to create this wonderful, strong woman who didn't take no for an answer, who found ways to work around these societal failings around her, and I thought that it was just wonderful to read about, and I definitely enjoyed it, and it still stayed true to like the historical accuracies of Victorian London, even though she did take a couple of liberties here and there. So definitely highly recommend this, but I mean, it wouldn't be in my top 10 of 2018 if I didn't recommend it. Sitting at number 6 is They Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This one was really hard for me to place, like where in my top 10, and I gave it at number 6 because, well, one, this book follows 16-year-old Star as she kind of has to re-navigate around this world that she kind of grew up in after her best friend was shot in front of her, unarmed. So she has to re-navigate her world and where she fits in this world because she lives in a poorer neighborhood, and she goes to this highly well-known prep school with nothing but white people, so she has to find her fit in the world. And like I said, I struggled putting this at number 6. I wanted it to be a lot higher, mainly because I thought that it deserved to be higher, but I didn't know where exactly, so number 6 was kind of where I settled it for myself. I thought this book had so many wonderful messages for kids and lots of hard discussions that is necessary in this day and age, as well as kind of navigating it through Star's eyes, where she is really stuck with her identity and what it means for her to be in this situation, what it means for her friend, and we get to see a lot of the sides that media doesn't allow us to see, and it just tells us that we need to be questioning what we are inhaling or what we are consuming from the media, and see there are more than one side to every situation that is happening, and that not everything is cookie cutter, and that there are lives that are dying, or like lives that are being taken away, and that really needs to be inspected before we jump to blaming everything. And it was just such a heartbreaking book to read about, and it's just such an important read, and I think that books like Angie Thomas's puts YA back on the map as very important things to read about, because people tend to write off YA literature because there are no messages, but I think that if you look deep enough, there are several messages going on throughout YA, and this one is one of the ones that I think redeems that unnecessary standard that YA means nothing. or is just like for children's novels. Are we really surprised this book is going to be top 5? Because the 5th one is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi, and this follows essentially an entire world where magic has gone dark. Their magic was taken away from them, and they are now treated with nothing, just very terribly, essentially. And now Zele, who is our main character, has to find a way to bring magic back or else have it be gone for the rest of her life. I enjoyed this book. I thought that there was such a wonderful magical aspect to it that I think was necessary to be done, and there's so much little messages here. While it did borderline corny and I didn't really enjoy the weird Zuko relationship going on, I did enjoy it. I think that there's a lot of things to be done with this book and to expand kind of the series and the world building and the characters. So I can't wait for the second book to come out this year, and I'm praying it ends up in my top 10 of 2019 just to find a theme going with it. Sitting at number 4 is The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wang. This is a graphic novel, as you all can tell, and it follows, what's her name? Frances, who is a dressmaker in Prince Sebastian, and Frances makes these beautiful, wonderful dresses that attract attention, while Prince Sebastian by day is known as the Prince, but by night is known as Lady Crystalia, who is one of the aspiring models of the world. And it just kind of brings up this question of like, Frances has to either give up her friendship or her budding career, and it's a really hard decision between figuring out if she has to choose her friend or anything. I thought that this book was wonderful. It was such a short read, but I found myself rereading it 10 times over because I was crying. I cried. But it was like, it had such wonderful themes about friendship and overall finding yourself, and there is wonderful representation in this book, and I think that this book is so good and deserves so much more hype around it. So if you haven't picked it up, pick it up. Number 3 is Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. This essentially follows 16-year-old Simon as he kind of has to figure out his sexuality. He is still in the closet, but he has been sending these letters back and forth between this guy named Blue, and his emails get out to someone who blackmails him, and he has to kind of figure out how to re-navigate the world and keep this secret of his. So this book made top 3 for a lot of reasons. One being that I think this was an important book to have out. I adored Simon as a character. I loved his friends. I loved how relatable the situation was. I liked that we didn't shy away from the tough conversations still, and that there were certain things that I think are still prevalent today, even though it was written like, what, early 2000s? 2015, just kidding. But it brought out something in me that I think that would have been really helpful when I was growing up and questioning my own sexuality, and someone that I could have related to, and someone for me to have been comfortable reading this book and just enjoy it and see that, like, I think this is an important book to have because it just it gives a space for LGBTQ teens who are still in the closet, who are still questioning these things. It gives them a safe space to kind of figure it out. It gives them a face because you can never tell if this is about like someone who is in fact gay, and it's a very safe book for them to read in the open. And I have so many words about this book and so many feelings that I think I will start crying because this book means so much to me, and I know that it means so much to other people, and I can't believe that it is a movie and his story is being told everywhere and bringing a sense of awareness to the situation that is the LGBT community, and bringing it to like forefront without us being background characters, without us having a tragic ending. We get a wonderfully soft ending, and oh my goodness, I have a lot of feelings. Sitting at number 2 is again a no-brainer, and that is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is another historical fiction book, and it has 2 stories going on. One is with Monique Grant, who is kind of this downtrodden, down her luck kind of journalist who has no idea where her life is going, as well as Evelyn Hugo, who is this glam golden age Hollywood starlet who has never been asked to who hasn't done an interview in a hot minute, and somehow does it asking Monique to do it. And these 2 women's stories intertwine, and Monique learns a lot from Evelyn throughout this process, and I love this book. I adored that we got to see so much representation in it. We have diverse characters, not only in skin color, but also in sexuality and backgrounds. We see that kind of how Evelyn had to maneuver through this world where it was very male domineering, and kind of pioneered this way for women to be able to do things, and for every other woman, not only just in Hollywood. I loved that the writing was so poetic, and I never really, and it was just this beautiful thing that I thought that it definitely deserves the hype that it got, because it was just so beautiful, the characters were so fleshed out, and everything was just great about the book, and I can't talk about it enough. Like, there's a tea talk on it, I believe, so I will leave that down below. So, and sitting at number 1, which is also a no-brainer, is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I have talked everyone's ear off about this book, that at this point everyone's probably getting ready to duct tape me every time I'm like, yeah, you should read this book. But this follows is essentially a retelling of the Achilles myth, only told by through the eyes of his best friend Patroclus. And we get to see kind of all of that, and I have a lot of feelings. The writing was just so magnificent. It was so heartbreaking. Like, I knew what was going to happen, because I have read the Achilles myth so many times over, but it still broke my heart. I was in tears at the end of it. Like, I couldn't believe that this book had done this to me after I had read this myth so many times over. I enjoyed Achilles. Typically, every time I read about Achilles, he seems like just a big bully who kind of threw a temper tantrum, but we really got to see the softer side of Achilles, and it's just so true to the original myth in terms of Patroclus's relationship with Achilles, and there was no whitewashing, there was no queer baiting, it was just absolute golden. And I love that we're getting more like accurate retellings of certain fairy tales and mythologies. People are no longer afraid to show like the LGBT side of some of these myths, because ancient Greece was not heterosexual, is the best way I can put it. And people tend to be like, oh yeah, they were just pals, you know, sitting 5 feet apart because they're not gay. You know, they're just the best gal pals. They were just holding hands and kissing because they just really adored their friendship. So I just really enjoyed Madeline Miller's writing, and I love that Greek mythology is coming back into play, because I love Greek mythology. So I'll be picking up more of her work. But if you haven't read this, or Circe, I haven't even read Circe yet, and I'm over here like, go pick it up. But pick up Song of Achilles. You will not be disappointed. You will cry, because no matter what I do, I cry. Like, I'm rereading it this month, and I'm gonna start, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm just crying already. So, but that is my top 10 of 2018, with some honorable mentions. But what books did you guys end up being in your top 10? Were you guys surprised by some of my decisions? Hopefully the top 3 weren't much of a surprise at all. But if you guys have any questions or want me to talk more about these books in depth, comments are a wonderful place for you to go to. Same thing with my social media. I talk about my books a lot there, and my writing. So if you like these videos, I have another video related, similar to this, coming out soon. So keep an eye out for that. But subscribe if you like my videos. I do upload twice a week now, just to be a little calmer on myself when things pop up. But until then, I'll talk to you guys in the comments or in social media, or however you want to find a way to contact me. But until then, I'll talk to you guys somewhere else. Bye.